Philosophers of Enlightenment. How did philosophers of the Enlightenment affect our society today? There were many philosophers of the Enlightenment, and they all had different views on government and the people. They helped form our modern world today. They set the basic principles for our government. They also solved problems using thought and reason. The first thinker is John Locke. His quote was, "Revolt is the right of people. People have the right to rebel if the government fails to protect their rights." He came up with the right to rebel. His book was Two Treaties of Government. The next thinker is Thomas Hobbes. His quote was, "During the time men live without a common power to keep them all in awe, they are in that conditions called war, and such a war as if of every man against every man. This means that when there is no power, there is war." He believed in a monarchy because he believed that all people were naturally bad, and his book was Levitian. The next thinker is Voltaire. His quote was, "I do not agree with what you have to say, but I'll defend to death your right to say it." That means that everyone has the right to say their own opinion, even if others don't agree. His thoughts were freedom of thought and expression. He wrote more than 70 books. The next philosopher is Montesquieu. His quote was, "Power should be a check to power." This means that major powers should watch over other powers. He came up with the separation of powers, and his book was Spirit of Laws. The next thinker is Jean-Jacques Rousseau. His quote was, "Man is born free, and everywhere he is in chains." This means that every man has his rights, but there is a certain extent to that freedom. He came up with individual freedom, and his book was The Social Contract. The next thinker is Mary Wollstonecraft. Her quote was, "I love my man as my fellow, but his scepter, real or usurped, extends not me unless the reason of an individual demands my homage. And even then, the submission is to reason and not to man." This means that she will respect people for who they are and not for their sex. She came up with women's equality, and her book was A Vindication of the Rights of Women. The last thinker is Bessarion. His quote was, "For a punishment to be just, it should consist of only such gradations of intensity as suffice to deter men from committing crimes." This means that for two people that commit a crime, they should have the same punishment. He came up with the abolishment of torture and wrote no books.